Hey everyone, welcome back to Our Place. We are really excited to be kicking off a parenting series over the next few weeks. We're going to be hearing from parents who have children with disabilities in all different stages of life. We are really excited to be kicking it off with Shannon Johnson. Shannon Johnson lives in Maine and has a 27-year-old son with autism. She's going to share her experiences. So Shannon, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you, your family, your son.
All righty. So, as you mentioned, we live in Maine. We are a family of four. My husband and I have two kids. So we have our son who's 27 and our daughter is 25. And both have launched. So we're kind of empty nesters. But I don't know if you're ever really an empty nester when you have a child with a disability. So I hover quite a bit. He lives about 20 minutes away in his own home with 24/7 caregivers. So yeah, and I was just before we got on here, I had to make sure my air fryer was turned off so it wouldn't be too noisy because I cook for him too. And I'm working on letting go of some of those things, but he has some medical needs and he'll eat a healthy diet if I give it to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm pretty much his buddy on a day-to-day basis and spend a lot of time with him and think he's amazing and try to remind him how brave and resilient and how lucky I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we talk to a lot of families that they go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when my child turns 22 and ages out of the school system? And you mentioned that your son lives alone with care. So what was that process like to, go that route of finding a home for him and finding care? And how'd you guys make that decision?
Oh, it's going to be different in every state. Every state's different as far as what resources they have to offer and things like that. My son happened to be living out of state. He went to a school in Massachusetts for a season. And so he aged out while he was in that school in Massachusetts. So we weren't just aging out of a program, he was aging out and coming back into the state. So it was more challenging than
Oh, yeah.
most people. Yeah. And he's amazing. And I don't want to talk negative about him at all, but he's a challenging guy
Yeah.
that can be physical. And the fact that he can be physical means that I can't take care of him in my own home. I can't, this home setting is not appropriate for him.
Yeah.
And so we've had to put up those boundaries. He wants to be at home. He tells me every single day that he would rather be living at my home. So there's that. So anyway, when he aged out, graduated, yeah, he wanted to come home and that wasn't an option. So we worked with the state in the state of Maine because he did have challenging behaviors. He went to the top of the waiver list.
Oh, okay.
So we do have a waiting list in the state of Maine, and I have lots of friends whose kids are on it.
Yeah.
But we went to the top, and I don't recommend it because it meant 2 hospitalizations and lots of failures. And
Yeah.
you have to fail really hard to land where he did, and it is what it is. So yeah, so he had the money was there, the waiver was there for him. There just weren't places that were suitable for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the state at that time, like 5 or 6 years ago, 2015, they weren't opening new facilities. They were trying to fill what they had. And so the only places that came open were really only suitable for maybe an elderly person that was ill. Those were the homes that were coming available. So we really didn't have an option except to buy our own home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what we did. And yeah, so I mean, I'm seeing this happen more and more in our state anyway, that families are doing that because then there's pros and cons to it. But one of the pros is you actually do have more ability, my phone, to kind of, like kind of have some more say about what their life looks like
Right.
when you own the home.
Yeah. And
Uh,
did you find the caregivers yourself, or did the state assist you with that?
so how it works in our state is your case manager, if you have one, and if
Yeah.
you don't have one, you can get assigned one. We had a case manager, and they send out a call, and all the agencies get this call, and then they reach back out to you if they think it might be a match, and you kind of go back and forth like that.
Okay.
So, and you narrow it down by region and things, things like that, needs. And um, it ended up that there was one in our area that agreed to take our son.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that worked out. Yeah.
So we talk a lot about, services are obviously hard to find. I mean, I think that's a universal problem that people find. And some states are way better than others. That is for sure. And you mentioned that your son was in a program in school in a different state. So how did you go about finding a program in a different state, and how did that work?
Yeah. Again, it ended up as part of that cycle that we kind of got on because of his challenging behaviors. He ended up on a developmental disability unit, hospital unit, um, to get, med changes and things like that.
Yeah.
And they kind of have resources to help you find. So in that hospital system, their social worker helped connect us with other schools, and I went and toured different places and narrowed it down to um, the center that he ended up at.
So would you say that that could be an option for parents, if they're not finding services in their area or their state, to look outside of that area and outside of that state?
Are you talking about as an adult?
Yeah, or even
I
in
mean,
that school age.
I've done some of that, just years, honestly, because my husband's has ended up working out of state many
Hmm.
years.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to move with him at times.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of that research, and there's barriers. Usually there's been waiting list
Yeah.
that they can't tell you when they're gonna, so it would be that my son would have to move with us and have no services until he got off a waiting list. And there's no guarantee that the waiting list is going to open up anytime.
Yeah.
So yeah, from the states that I've done research with, the waiting list, you know, is larger than the resources currently. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, I know one thing, at least that we're trying to do, and I do want to tell parents about this, there's a lot of grant money out there and there is a lot of scholarship money. So if people cannot receive government assistance through waivers, we have a financial page on our website, but there are other options, like start evaluating those, looking into those. And that's something that we're trying to grow our database to make sure that everyone's aware of that, because the waiver system is so challenging to
I mean, that's brilliant. If that could be something that parents could start, looking into, and how do they qualify for that? And how much would how much would that allow them to subsidize and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I would start sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is daunting to think that you have to wait for a system to say that, they're ready to provide resources. I know everybody's strapped and states are strapped, and
Yeah.
nobody wants their taxes raised and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. So having gone through, the school age and the transition out of school, if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice, now that you've been through it, is there something that you would tell yourself?
yeah, I would say calm down. It's a long road. I felt like back in the day when my son was diagnosed in 98, Megan, there was a philosophy where you had like this window of time. And if you didn't rescue your kids and by giving them all these resources and filling all their time with all these treatments and therapies, then there was no hope beyond that. And so it's a blur. Those years of my children's lives are a blur because my mantra was be relentless. Like I'm gonna do all the things and we're gonna get through this. And that we passed through that window and he didn't make the gains that would give him a different path. And it's okay,
Yeah.
and I wish I would have enjoyed my kids more and just recognized instead of looking at all the things that were lost, looking at the little precious things that were there and just basking and savoring that time instead of feeling frantic like I did. Because I did.
Yeah.
That defined that phase of my life is the franticness of it. So yeah, I think I'd say, it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But allow yourself to appreciate and see your children as just precious, valuable little boogers that you can't get out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also hear from a lot of parents, when they go through that, like especially through the diagnosis, you feel like you're on an island. It's just me. And they really want to connect with other people who are going through that at the same time as them, with people who have been through it. So were you able to find support in other parents that were going through it or had gone through it? And, what would you say to those families?
I see that is really, really critical to connect with other families. I know my pediatrician connected me with a mom, and she connected me with another mom.
Yeah.
And that second mom and I had a phone relationship for like 2 years. She was my lifeline. We talked every single day about everything. And we ended up going to some of the same doctors and sharing resources. We hired some of the same support people to come into our home. Like we ended up, but I didn't meet her for like 2 years. And because we were both busy moms that were trying to rescue our children. And finally, we both had this window of time where we could get together, and we met at McDonald's. And she looked nothing like what I thought she was going to look like. I was like, "Are you?" Yeah, I was like, "Oh, you're okay." So it took me a minute because I pictured someone completely different. And then we just held each other, and I was like, "I couldn't have got through this without you." And she's still one of my dearest friends, and we don't see each other nearly enough anymore. But she's just one of the many, many people. But just having one person that you don't have to apologize, you don't have to explain things, and you can just be real and authentic with. You need that because there's also going to be the other friends that you have that don't have an individual with disability in their life, and they're not going to get you, and that's okay. You need them too, but you also need that safe person where you can vent, but they can also just encourage you or support you or share resources.
And you found that person through your pediatrician.
He connected me with one mom and she connected me with another. Yeah, that was that way. And then I did join some support groups. And like you notice each other as parents too. Like in the library, you just you get this little radar, like my son didn't look autistic necessarily, whatever that looks like. But when you see him taking his library books and going with them, like that's not what any of the other kids are doing. So that would get the radar of another mom. She'd be like, "Oh, hi." Like, "Oh, my son, just goes to this school," and you kind of figure it out, and so we found each other, and that's how I met a lot of people too. It's just having that kind of radar.
I love that.
Yeah, I met a dad one time because he was in Walmart and his daughter was probably like 14 and he was pushing her in the cart, not because she couldn't walk, but because she was just super happy being in the cart. And so I was like, I got to meet this dad because good for him that he's just pushing his daughter around Walmart and she's loving it in the cart and they're having a good time. And
Anything or any advice or tips that you would give as far as having a disabled child and I guess what people would say a neurotypical child, which everyone goes, isn't everybody disabled almost in their own little way? um,
Yes.
but going through, having a sibling and all that kind of stuff.
Any advice I would give? Oh Lord. I mean, with my daughter, thankfully we have good family close by.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we had family in Georgia. And so she was always included in everything because my kids were really close.
Yeah.
But there came a time where like she surpassed his ability to participate in different things. And so I kind of outsourced her. A lot of times she ended up going on family vacations with my sister because we weren't going on family vacations anymore.
Yeah.
Things like that. And I thought in the heat of it, I'm like, this is the best for her to outsource her life in a lot of ways and let her spend a lot of times with friends that I trusted and just kind of having, extended family that would take her in. And there was times I couldn't even drive with my son because he wasn't safe in a car.
Yeah.
So if she needed to be somewhere, I had to rely on somebody else. So it was just good having, people around that knew our situation and knew the boundaries that we had.
Yeah.
Then you talk to her, she's 25 now. And unfortunately, she says that she saw herself as that her value in her home was to be very small and to not have needs. That's how she saw her value. And I didn't mean to project it that way to her. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I think maybe I wish that I would have clued her in more on what I was doing
Yeah.
instead of just trying to treat it like, oh, hey, you get to go on vacation with your aunt. It's
So
awesome.
fun for you. Yeah.
Call mama every night. Instead of doing that, I could have just said, we want to do stuff. I maybe should have explained things more instead of just trying to act like this is normal.
Yeah.
But she's okay. She's a great kid. Counseling's not a bad thing though either. It isn't. Giving your kids, and I've heard other families, I couldn't find anything when my daughter was that age, other families that have had sibling groups, like instead of a parent group, it's a sibling group. And
Yeah.
I do think those things are really important. And I wish my daughter had had someone who had a brother like hers.
Yeah.
She had friends. One of her boyfriends had a brother that had Down syndrome. And she's like, Mom, I can't even relate because her brother is like so doggone cute and huggable. And my brother just busted a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
So it's like very different. So pairing her up with someone that she could be authentic in ways that I needed with my friends too, probably would
Yeah.
have been
I've heard
helpful.
the same thing. People said the husbands need the same thing. You see like moms like come together and they have some sibling support groups here and there. And they said, we need something for the husbands. They can go to a baseball game and just
Yes.
do like
Yeah.
man
Do
things.
something rather than
Yeah.
we want to sit around and talk. I want to
Yes.
hug. Let's pray. But yeah, men need to go do something. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something we'll work on providing. Well, maybe we'll do a parenting series and it can evolve into like husband hangouts.
Softball team, something to get. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a few questions that I'm gonna ask. You can answer them, or if you go, you know what, I'm just going with what I can do every day, then I honestly think that will make some of these parents feel better as well. Okay, so how have you planned for the future for your son is one of the questions.
Well, we did start a special needs trust,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband kind of is in charge of that, but I know it's in the mix. We did our will, and so we kind of have it laid out for, what his care will look like in the event that we're not around. So we have, those people in our life that had said they will step in. Oh
Did
Lord.
you go through, because we have talked about this too before, did you get guardianship?
Yes,
Okay.
we did. We did get guardianship. My son is just not able to advocate for himself
Yeah.
I know it's important for a lot of individuals with disabilities to have guardianship. I've been on committees at the state level where I've met individuals who their parents didn't want them to live with their girlfriend or boyfriend and they had guardianship over them, but they were, they had a disability, but they also were an adult. And so they had to fight for so I mean, I get it, but with our son, yeah, we needed to do that, but it's still heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is, but that I mean, I had a case manager that walked me through the steps of that. It shouldn't be that complicated, and I don't think it really is, but you need somebody to hold your hand through that. So if you don't have a case manager, reach out to maybe another parent who's done it.
Yeah. And we have Sarah White, an attorney that did an interview for us, walking you through the whole process too. So if people want to check that out, you can know a little bit of what to expect.
Yeah. And my husband was, as I said, he's worked in other states, and I think he was in Canada at the time that we were doing it, but the judge was really nice. I was there in person. My husband joined over Zoom or something. And we did it together that way. So they were super accommodating. The judges were really, really nice. Let us know that it's a very serious and sober kind of decision.
Yeah.
But it's not irreversible either.
Yeah. And that was probably a part of your guys' one of the first steps in planning for the future. Cause I know that's one of the first things that you have to do, especially as they are getting to that adult age. Okay. What has been the most challenging aspect of adulthood for your son, and how do you cope with that?
Wow. I think feeling isolated is his most challenging. He's social and he likes to be around people. And he tells me he wants to be around normal people, which I think means people that can participate in a conversation with him, because he's very verbal. So he's had housemates in the past that were not verbal, and it just wasn't a good match, because he needed that, and they probably needed someone that didn't put a hole in the wall. So that those didn't work out. But yeah, he definitely is lonely, which is another reason why I go over every day.
Yeah.
I will go out and do stuff, but finding friendship, like he'll just tell me, like I need a friend. I just need a friend. So how do we deal with it? I've hired someone. So we've got one gal that comes over once or twice a week. And I said, your job is just to treat him like a dude and be his friend and answer his questions. And so we've got one gal that comes over once or twice a week. And I said, your job is just to treat him like a dude and be his friend and answer his questions and just enjoy company with him. And she does. She's awesome. She's a special ed teacher, picking up some money on the side.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to build more things like that into his life. So I just tell her too with that, it's like, don't worry about the stuff that, like if he spills something, or if he's didn't brush his teeth after this way, like that's not your role. Let it go. That's someone else's role. So just have fun.
Yeah.
And it's been great too, because she can give me a lot of feedback that he can't give me. So she can say, we talked a lot about this movie. Has he ever seen this movie? And I'm like, well, let's get it. Let's download that for him or whatever.
Yeah.
Or music, or she can just give me a heads up or what they talked about. And it can kind of help me support him better.
Yeah. That's great. And you used care.com to find somebody there and stuff. Okay. So maybe check that out. Okay. This one's a hard one, and we've talked about this. What services have you found to help him transition into adult life with autism? And we've talked about finding services isn't that easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish that I had more to say. I hope you can interview someone else that can offer more things. Because I have friends with adult children that have different needs than my son, and they have access to a lot of different resources than we have. But his challenging behaviors, he didn't qualify for things that they would, so I think a good place to start in most states is your local autism society. I think every state has one.
Yeah.
Good place. For years, I was a member, meaning I paid like $25, and you get to be on the email list and kind of and they just keep you posted more. I think their library, you have access to their lending library and things like that. So it's worth a membership to
Yeah.
that. And it often can take you to someone else who can take it. I feel like that's a lot what happens is you just start asking, and one thing will lead to another.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice? Because I mean, it's because you have had such a hard time finding services. I mean, what would you say to parents who might be going through that? Like somebody asked earlier how you cope. I mean, how do you cope with that? That's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about it every day, and I try to be a problem solver, myself, um, and try to, yeah, how do I do? I don't know. 'Cause it's hard.
Yeah.
It's right now. We're not doing so great at it right now. But I do have an awesome case manager. We are looking to other agencies that actually provide resources rather than just support, that are beyond just kind of being there physically. Um, Connecting with other families. I need to do a better job. It's gotten trickier in the adult system. Think that the things are just not as easy they don't happen or as organically as when he was in school.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think it sounds like you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've personally heard stories from you about how amazing he seems. And so thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that your story is going to be able to help so many parents who are either going through this now or about to go through this. And so I just cannot thank you enough for opening up and sharing your story. And if any other parents are ever interested in sharing their stories like Shannon did, please reach out to us. We want to be the outlet and avenue for you guys to be able to do that.
Thank you. I thought of one other thing. Is it too late?
No,
Okay.
no.
So I started doing this later in life, whatever, but I do keep a running list of things that either I notice about my son or that he says or that he hints at, and because he's verbal, but he's not always reliable.
Yeah.
So I feel like I am a detective, but I have a notebook and a running list of things that help inform me of who he is and what's important to him. Because I'm trying to build a life that he wants, not the
Right.
life I want for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of being in the adult system is you have something called a person-centered plan. And it's supposed to be the things that he wants in his life. And so ours is coming up to update, and it's been top of mind. And I've just been going over those notes again about what are the things that he wants. And then as a team, his agency and me as a team, we have to figure this out. We have to keep coming back to them. And if we didn't meet those, then that's our fault. And we got to figure out a way to come back to it. And so we're building, friendships and things like that into his life. It's got to be a priority. And anyway, I just think start paying attention to those things about your child. Keep a notebook. Be an expert on what you think that they want. Be paying attention to those little things.
Yeah. And I love that. Build a life that they want, not the life that you want for them. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I'll give example. One thing he has said, this was a season, but he's like, I want to eat a burger every day. Okay, so we can make that happen.
Yeah.
So he has his food at his house, and I prep all his food, and it's there, and it's in a freezer all for him or whatever. And if he wants a burger, he can have a burger every single day. It's his life. He can have a burger.
That sounds like a 13-year-old boy's dream as well.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, if he was living on his own, he would go and make himself a burger every day or whatever. And that's okay. So that's important to him.
I feel like that just shows you too, the disability community and people who don't have disabilities, especially when it comes to men, really are not that different, because most men living on their own would probably want a burger every day too.
A burger every day. Totally. Yes.
All right. Well, Shannon, thank you so much. I can't wait for everyone to hear it and get feedback and submit more questions and hear more stories from more parents. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.